have with us through Zoom, I guess, Hazem and Martin and Philip. Okay. So we'll start. Our topic today will be basically digital transformation. And we have a couple of topics that we need to cover during our panel today. First of all is how COVID-19 have accelerated basically this digital transformation effort. We will talk as well about network transformation and management. We will talk about customer experience transformation, and we will talk about big data and the investment and the capabilities of this. I will start with my first question. I will address it to Philip. Philip, I want to ask you, basically, during the outbreak of the COVID-19, forced the rapid adoption of digital transformation initiative. And the importance of digital transformation today is more of a reality. I want to understand from you what are basically the biggest challenges facing telcos today, and what are basically the quick wins that will remain after this big transformation initiative? Philip, we cannot hear you. Can you unmute yourself, please?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfect.
Fantastic. So good afternoon again. Thanks for having me. Frankly, I'd love to be with you on stage today, but our security team does not allow me to be in a room with more than 4 people. And luckily for Tony and Christine, there are more than that in the room. So let's hope the video holds. I work for a telecommunication company you might have heard of called Vodafone. We deliver services in about 125 countries, 750 million people, essentially. There are 5 points I probably would love to make, but let's see if there is space for that, to put your question into a proper context. The first is that, frankly, the first learning for us, it's unbelievable that a virus brought most of the world's economy down for a while. But it did. Because we have activities in many, many countries, we saw it coming from the east, then we saw it hitting Italy, where it hit really, really hard, where we have a big hub. Which led us to apply our business continuity planning extremely fast. We moved about 100,000 people to working from home in a matter of days, and then we switched our attention to helping out. But the fascinating bit, which is the first element to answer your question, is that we essentially used our digital transformation map as a blueprint for this. Processes that you would normally use to help a client to set up, for instance, their internet at home, well, you can incredibly fast move to using to transform your entire management system to run your management teams from home. And so we ended up being a very large company being run from 100 or so houses. Our business resisted incredibly well, as shown by the strong results we presented this week. But others didn't. 15 million jobs have been lost just in Europe this summer. 50% of jobs have been down at some point in Africa during the first phase of the crisis. This is terrible. The second part, and more positive point I would like to make, and which has already been made by various speakers during today, is essentially that digital has become an essential part of everybody's life. And digital transformation has become a must, and that is really fantastic. I think we've all been saying that for a while, inside of our companies, outside of companies, asking for supportive policies to help us help society. But this crisis has really made the importance of what we do hyper clear to all. There is a caveat to that, which is it's also a huge responsibility. And I don't think we as an industry have really realized how much of a responsibility this was before. Whether we like it or not, all of us in this room are now making the difference between economic lights staying on or not. And that is fascinating and scary at the same time. So we need to take stock of it. The third one is that we've realized throughout this journey that half-baked plans, be it ours or the ones of others, are just not enough anymore. If you say, for instance, that you want to improve digital schooling to allow kids to carry on with school during a pandemic or to move to digital schooling altogether, and you say, oh, let's improve connectivity because I'm a connectivity provider, but then you find out during the crisis that the real problem is that kids don't have computers or adapted software, or that there is a computer at home but it's shared between the 2 parents plus 3 kids, well, then it doesn't work. You know, it's nice on paper, but it just doesn't work. So the big third learning is that we need A to Z plans, plans that take stock of the entire chain that you need to make something work and to fix a problem. For instance, bringing affordable school to all. The fourth one is that we realize that we can all do much more. We spent the first 6 months of the crisis helping people, companies, public authorities facing the medical part of the country, of the crisis, pretty much probably like you all did. We've actually helped governments, even in countries where we're not active, because they would call in and say, hey, we see what you've done to help the municipality in that country, can you do something to help us out? And we did. It just felt it was the right thing to do for a purpose-led company like we are, so we did. And we learned a lot from this. What I think is that we all need to pause at this stage, probably, and reflect on it collectively as an industry to see what do we learn from that, how do we adapt our behavior based on what we have learned during the crisis. Frankly, when the pandemic clears, we will all realize that we've been given a generational opportunity to rebuild a more resilient, fair, inclusive, and green society. And again, on terms of responsibility, it's now up to us to make it happen, which we find incredibly fascinating. The fifth and last point, and I'm sorry to talk so much, is really to call our friends, industry, governments, authorities in the room to do that together. We really believe that societal resilience, which is the collective ability from recovering from challenges, has become essential. And this crisis has shown it. And it's not just about this crisis. It's just more important than what we all thought. We think we need to lead the charge as an industry. I mean, as we said, we have the tools to make it happen. We now need to translate that into a way that can work with others. For instance, this morning we published, Tony, not because of you, but we did publish it this morning, we published an SME support report, which essentially leads to everybody seeing what could be done to support SMEs in any region based on the pandemic, so that they know what are the little endpoints that you can touch to make a big difference. So we're doing that on the form of what we call 6-star plans, which is multidimensional plans per country to touch all the avenues that need to be tackled due to COVID. And frankly, the invitation is there. We would be delighted to talk about that with all of you, because this has become super important.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you for your detailed answer. My next question will be I'll address it to Hatem. How mobile operators are balancing the need to move their business digitally as soon as possible against working on a longer-term digital transformation strategy?
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's an interesting question. And I guess that the COVID-19 did not really give us much of a choice. We had to comply with the new rules and the new regulations that COVID-19 have basically drawn for us. So COVID-19, actually, it was, yes, a pandemic, but it also helped in accelerating the digital transformation of so many telcos, specifically, and across also so many different industries. How do we balance the agenda? I think that this is what I'm saying, and that the COVID-19 has not given us any choice to really plan on this. I think we will start from where we are today, that we have prepared the business, prepared the society to embrace digital transformation. And this is where we will continue. So I don't think that we will go back in the previous phase. We will start from where we are right now. So what we have achieved so far is that we were very successful in addressing the transformation, if you like, the transformation of society from, or the transformation of life, basically, from being a physical state to a remote state. So we played a major role as telcos also in enabling this transformation for so many societies, so many businesses, so many countries. So we enabled working from home, for example. We enabled schooling from home or digital schools. There was a lot of collaboration and meeting between so many people from different parts of the world. So we brought people also together, and etc. So there was so many things that we have contributed in this transformation from a physical state, if you like, to a remote state. And I think that this event probably also gives us an example of what we would expect maybe in the future, because this is a hybrid kind of event where we have physical presence and we have people that are connecting, online. And I believe that life and businesses will continue with this kind of model, that you will have people that will work and will meet physically, but you will still embrace and accept the fact that some people and some businesses and some activities will be actually done remotely.
As long as it is without masks, we don't mind. Okay, I'll ask the same question to Martin. How mobile operators, again, can balance this need to move their business digitally, between moving their business digitally as soon as possible and between building a longer-term transformation strategy? And if you want to keep one single initiative that was built on a quick initiative from an urgency perspective, what would it be?
Okay, I mean, it's two sets of fascinating answers to those questions. I suppose my view of COVID and the impact of COVID is slightly different. I think of digital transformation in a very broad sense, and in a recent book I wrote, I can talk about the 10 transformation journeys of the telco, and some of those are technological, some of those are around services, some of those are around customers, some of those are around business models, and some are around culture and operations, how we work. And I think COVID's had the certainly huge impact in the cultural side of how the telco works. And it's also maybe shifted some of the thinking within the telco on how we can create new services, engage in a different way with our important B2C, B2B customers. But it hasn't transformed the telco, and I think we would be premature to think that it has, because there's still enormous changes that are needed in the types of services we offer, how we develop our business cases, and the types of business models we offer our customers. I think there's massive changes needed in how we handle data, and I know we might be talking about that later on. Security is another big issue that I think COVID has opened our eyes to maybe some of the inherent security challenges that are there with IoT and so on. But we're beginning to use it in anger now. So I think COVID has forced us to a very good start. It's like we're push starting a car, and we have got going now on digital transformation. I think what's really important is we don't stop. Now, the final part of your question was, what would you hold on to of the changes that are underway, the quick fixes? And for me, the obvious one, and I think Atam mentioned it there as well, the way we've changed how we're working, the flexibility in terms of how we engage with our staff. The flexibility in terms of where we can now employ our staff from. I don't just have to choose the best person available in Dubai to work for me. I can choose the best person available in Dubrovnik or in Dublin or in Dallas to work for me, because now we've changed our mindset on where, what pool are we fishing from? What sea are we fishing from to draw the best staff? And the biggest challenge in digital transformation for every single company in the world, not just telcos, is the people challenge, the skills. Can we develop the skills we need for the future, for the 5-10-year future, rather than can we evolve into those skills? And that is going to require this ability to draw those skills from wherever they happen to be, rather than just what's the best available who can do 9 to 5 in my office. And that change, I think, is a really important one that we have to hold on to and then grow.
Thank you, Martin. We'll go for the second topic. It's around the network transformation and management, and I will address my question to Enrique. What are the most critical changes, enablers, and tools from a network transformation perspective that you need to embrace to face the future more effectively?
Thank you for the question. Good afternoon, everyone. So I think it's very difficult to say or pinpoint what are the most critical, because the COVID emergency has been discussed earlier, brought new requirements, brought new challenges, and brought new opportunities. Right? When we look at the digital transformation from a service provider perspective and from a technology partner, we see that it needs to touch multiple elements of the ecosystem of a service provider. When you look at the network, you need to have flexibility on the network to scale in, scale out, and to have agility to fine-tune your network to serve the customers that have changed dramatically in terms of behaviors. For that, we are looking at cloud transformations, we are looking at bringing new solutions based on software that can give that agility to the network so that you can model and fine-tune the network as per the needs of your customers, but also to address multiple segments that have been created with this COVID situation. When you look as well as elements, and it was mentioned as well earlier, when we have now everyone working from home, all of us are working at home, our houses are a home office, a school, and in many other aspects are a cinema and entertainment. Security or cybersecurity became a major topic that I think the industry was aware, but it was not really seeing the impact of it. So cybersecurity is an area that needs to be accounted on the digital transformation as well. We also have right now, how can I maintain the engagement of my customers, right? We used to engage with our customers, and right now the customers are not engaging with us anymore on the traditional ways. I need to be able to serve that customer, maintain the engagement with the customer through different channels, digital channels, where I can keep informing the customer about services that I can provide, understand what is their experience, and how can I fine-tune that experience towards providing a better services for his needs. Again, if I'm working from home and I have my kids doing homeschool, my requirements at home are very much different from what they were a few months ago. And I would be very happy if my service provider can address those requirements to me by either providing more quality, adaptive quality, and QoS for the different services that I'm using. There's a lot of elements that the digital transformation needs to touch. Again, with all the transformation we had, there is also new opportunities of business. The business model needs to evolve, right? If we look at specifically in our region, Middle East and Africa, many of the service providers rely on roaming as a strong source of revenue. With the limitation on movement, those revenue sources have changed and are not there anymore. But in other cases, I can provide security to my customers because people are working from home. I can serve enterprises by providing specific services that extend the office capabilities into the homes of the employees. So when we look at, as a technology partner from a digital transformation, we look at as a broad approach. All of them are required. All of them will be evolving and will translate on a total different experience from the network, total different business model for some of the service providers in terms of revenue sourcing, in terms of engagement with their customers.
Thank you, Enrique. I'll go to the next question and address it to Hazem. Hazem, what role do you think can integrating an IoT on 5G network play in improving service delivery, health, safety, and efficiency in a post-COVID world?
Thank you. One of the things we've been discussing quite a bit during the COVID pandemic is how would our cities look moving forward, and how are they going to design a lot of their facilities as being multi-purpose facilities. And when you think about what we ended up doing during COVID, we ended up using sports arena and other venues as temporary health facilities, because we had overflow, and even some other cities have even used containers as an expansion of some of their health facilities. So when you think about all of these things, and from a connectivity point of view, in a post-COVID world, a lot of the facilities that we're going to be designing are going to have the type of connectivity and the type of sensors, IoT devices and others, that would allow us to use them in a multi-purpose mode. And without keeping this in mind is that a lot of the things that we've taken for granted, as how our cities and facilities operated, are going to be very different in a post-COVID world. And not only is this an isolated event, but we expect these will be recurring events. So a lot of people in the city design and the facilities design space are talking right now about what we call a blended mode, where a lot of these facilities and cities will have to flex very quickly from a purely virtual mode into sort of like a blended physical and virtual mode. And with that in mind, all of a sudden, getting the IoT, getting the 5G connectivity, Wi-Fi, and other sorts of connectivity and sensing elements become multi-purpose in that post-COVID scenario.
Okay. Thank you so much, Hazem. Very insightful. Ghazi, would you like to answer the same question? What do you believe integrating IoT on 5G network will play in improving service delivery, health, safety, and efficiency?
Not much, frankly.
You don't want to? Okay. We'll change.
I don't think it will change much. No, seriously. So I think as an industry, we like to complicate things. We like to make things very complicated. I believe we should really try to simplify and focus on the outcome and see how we can help our customers. In this case, if it's digital, if it's telcos themselves transforming, how can we help them understand the benefit of IoT and data and AI and so on, not for the sake of technology, but for the sake of specific outcome. And we don't necessarily focus on simplifying and then creating that specific outcome. So I'm sitting with executives in the telco world and the mobile operators and so on. And the question is, wonderful AI, IoT, data, and so on. How can this help me? What will this change for me? Is it going to optimize my business? Is it going to help me understand my customers better? Can I use it, for example, in the promise of data and data analytics and AI is about using this data to understand customer behavior, understand customer interaction, understand the performance of my network, but to achieve a certain outcome, right, is to help me understand what things do I need to launch, predict behavior of customers. If I launch a certain package, what will they do? What will my competitor do? So these kinds of technologies should be looked at as a specific view towards an outcome and try to simplify as much as possible for the executives.
No, it's simple enough. And I think you're answering the second question about how will 5G contribute to the uplift of the digital customer experience? And I think part of your answers as well this question. If you want, you can still elaborate on this one, or I can ask someone else.
Yeah, it's the same scenario. I mean, 5G is wonderful as a technology. It's going to help us in terms of connectivity, speed, bandwidth, reach, etc. At the end of the day, it's, again, what is the outcome, and what is it that we're going to deliver towards businesses? What is it that how are you going to use this technology to to actually help the operators maybe optimize, maybe deliver better services, but also at the end of the day, it's all about the outcome, and that's what I think we should be focused on, simplifying that.
Okay, thank you, Ghazi. Abdulrahman is with us. No. Okay, Martin, I'll come back to you. I'll ask you another question, basically. What are the main drivers you believe to enhance customer experience on the digital touch points? What are the enablers? And how can the customer overcome the resistance if we want to use, to still interact with a human against using digital channels?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. I think your presentation earlier on was very good as well in terms of understanding the customer journey and having a real understanding of the customer journey. I mean, you've got a world of lots of individual customers rather than trying to group them into segmentations and A1, B1, C1, and so on. In terms of, so understanding the customer journey is probably the very first and key and important step. I think data makes it hugely important in terms of then how you engage with that customer. Is that data being delivered in a timely fashion to the people who have to deal with the customers? Is it being predictive? So are you able to, the best problem is the problem the customer never learns about because you predicted and solved it in advance. The best offer, the best opportunity for that customer is the one that's being predicted rather than the one the customer has had to ask for. And so I think data plays a huge role in terms of understanding and engaging better with the customer. In terms of the mechanisms then for how the customer engages with the telco, my personal view is the more that is, it's a seamless, we all have been talking for several years now about sort of 360-degree omni-channel customer experience. And so we don't think anymore that there is one best way to deal with the customer. There has to be the most appropriate way to deal with the customer for the situation they're in and how they move from scenario to scenario and providing a really clear thread of engagement through all those scenarios. So excellent data, excellent multi-channel flexibility, no closed mind in terms of one channel is best, but all channels are appropriate at different times, and having the ability to really understand and constantly grow your knowledge of that customer's journey. There's no static analysis here that we talk about customer journey. It has to be a dynamic thing because customers change. They get married, they have kids, they change job, they change city, they change situation. So that would be my view. Digital transformation is the process of really understanding that, making sure all of the data is available to the people who have to deal with the customers, making sure all the systems are available, and then honestly understanding that your customer is constantly changing and your job is to stay with that and occasionally make mistakes.
Okay, thank you, Martin. Yes, Philip, but I'm watching the timer. We need to respect the time we have. So please, you have 2 minutes if you want to interfere on this question.
I won't take even 2 minutes. I would just like to build on what Martin just said, which is there has to be a conversation happening within the industry and with our external stakeholders about data. I mean, I completely agree that the data is crucial. It is also absolutely important that we recognize as an industry that we can't set up alone what are the rules of what is acceptable in terms of usage of that data, processing of that data. We and many companies are doing lots of efforts to try to understand what is acceptable society by society in terms of collection, processing, anonymization, usage, etc. At the moment, it is fair to say that that dialogue is not strong enough. It has to involve all elements of civil society to be able to say, okay, exactly as was said before, we need to be goal-based. So for this goal, what is the type of data we need? how can we process it in a way that people are not concerned about it, so that we go away from this black and white type of view on saying, oh no, the data can't be touched, or oh yes, companies can do whatever they want. It has to be dialogue, and I think Martin would probably concur to that, which is unless we do that dialogue, then basically we will have adverse reactions, and those will not be useful to the industry.
Thank you, Philip. So, Hatem, I'll go back to you as well. What is your say around the main drivers or the main enablers, if we can say, to enhance this customer experience on digital touchpoints? So, Philip was talking about data, Martin was talking about data as a main enabler. What do you think can be as well a main enabler to enhance this digital experience?
Of course, there's so many things, and it all, of course, then depend on what do you mean by a digital experience. What is sort of experience that you would like to offer to the end user, and then you will understand what are the things that you need to do. So data definitely is very important. You need to have the engine to analyze data, to dice it and slice it, and then understand your customers, and what Ghazi talked about, predictive, for example, analytics. So you understand that there will be a failure on your network, or there will be a huge demand in a specific time, and then you take action. And all of this also reflects on your, and when a customer calls an agent, for example, or call customer care, how would you understand them and deal with them? How do you understand to engage with customer? And this is what Martin also said, and I completely agree with him, is that you have to enable all different channels to interact with the customer. You cannot just limit it to 1 or 2 or 3 channels. There would be sometimes that you probably would like to interact physically. There will be sometimes over a chatbot. There would be sometimes over a customer care agent, and etc. Sometimes it's online and over self-care. And every customer, and this is what we learn, every country, every people are different. You cannot assume one experience that will fit all. People have preferences, and I think the difficult part is how we really understand that customer from the data that we have. The other thing that I would say that it will play a major role in transforming the company to be more digital centric. So it's not only about the customer experience that we offer. We're talking about a complete revamp of operating model of the businesses. We have to do things differently. And I would start, for example, from the network itself. We believe that network will transform completely from an architectural point of view, from an operating model, from scale-wise, even from expertise of the people and the skill set that you will deploy. We're talking about here having a building data center, regional, central, countrywide, edge, mobile edge cloud. We're talking about open source. We're talking about automation, so that we are building the network and understanding how to configure resources and configuration and parameters automatically. We're talking about a complete autonomy of the network in terms of a self-healing. So network should be smart and understand where are the issues, and it will reconfigure itself. So all of this, we believe that will play a major role in accelerating the digital transformation and enabling the business to be true digital centric.
Thank you. Enrique, would you like to give us your point of view on how this will accelerate customer experience?
Just to say, I agree with what has been said. I think customer experience on the digital environment is all about having good quality data. And we should be looking at the customer journey to understand the interactions of the customer with the network or the service that is being provided. That's definitely. And of course, you have multiple, I would say, shades of gray between customers, regions, and so on. Along with that, it's also important to understand the behavior of the network, because then you can correlate what is the customer experience in terms of interaction with my network and what is the network providing. So you can understand if the customer is experiencing any anomaly or not, because my perceived experience might be different from another person. I might not be happy with the same service that the person next to me provides because we have different standards. So it's important to understand the customer, understand the services, the customer journey, correlate that with the network information so that I can have an holistic view. But once I have that, I need to have the engine to process that information and create insights. Because if I have all this knowledge from the customer, from my network, and I can use that to proper serve the customer, and the example could be the customer is using a data and is about to exhaust his budget of data. If it's a prepaid, the network proactively can predict by when he will cross the threshold of his budget and proactively suggest, based on your usage on the last 30 days, you will be running out of data in 3 days. Should you want to top up? Here is a promotion. So those kind of insights really brings the benefit of knowing data. And of course, it was mentioned before, we also need to be careful of what kind of data we collect and how we use it, because sometimes the borderline between what is acceptable or not, it will depend on the regulatory framework, and it will depend as well on the personal preferences of each of us, right? So that's what I wanted to highlight. I think it's a very good point. I think the 5G will also bring a lot of new ways of exploring the customer experience and the data that is collected to provide new services. Because on the 5G, we will have business to consumer, business to business, but we will have as well business to consumer. Because the likes of Netflix, online gaming, will be using 5G on top of our service providers' networks to provide services. And that's something that service providers can also use to serve proper these markets and eventually to monetize.
Thank you so much, Eriki. Because all the topic is around data and data-driven decision, I will address this question to Hazem, sorry. What do you believe are the foreseen investments in a product related to big data, AI, and machine learning capabilities in the region first? And what are the opportunities that will bring on the table?
Thank you. I want to follow up on the previous question and link it to this one, if you don't mind. So, I mean, it's almost like a given that each one of the organizations, is now using its data about its customers to get to know them better and to, cater its products and services. But where it becomes really interesting is when you start mixing private sector data, and the mobile operators have a treasure of data basically about movement patterns in a city and where people go and their trips and all of that, and where do they spend their time. Once you start mixing these private sector data with public sector data, then all of a sudden you are able to create use cases and analytics and AIs and inferences in a very unique way so that you're better, as a master developer, or a city planner, you can do this based on how traffic patterns are being detected, not only from car riding companies and public transportation, but also with how the mobiles are moving around the city and so forth. And I want to bring it home a little bit to the region, because that's exactly what Smart Dubai has been doing, in 2019, to try basically to put together a strategy and policies for private sector data, observing privacy, making sure that monetization and agreement is there to start really complementing the government data sets with private sector data sets in a citywide data exchange, working with the mobile operators, working with the master developers, working with the car riding companies, the retailers, the airline companies, and coming together basically in a way where the city acts as a trusted broker. And once you have this data, great things happen with AI and all the other sort of like possibilities. So that is where I see a lot of the cities, including the cities here in the region, are going to be able really to get a great return on investment. And rather than trying to negotiate a lot of these agreements bilaterally, most of the time, the data that you want is sitting with another party that's not really interested in your data, but is interested in a third party. So these citywide data exchanges are going to really allow a lot of this to come into reality.
Thank you, Hazim. Thank you. I'll ask the same question to Ghazi. What is your point of view on?
Yeah, I just wanted to actually add on to the previous point around data, of course. Within the telco, and we do a lot of work on actually, before we take the step of saying, let's understand, let's do analytics on the data and use AI and so on, we feel there's a very important step that needs to take place. You need to actually organize your data and then utilize your data in terms of AI and so on. And when you organize your data, that's something that we believe is a huge gap in the transformation programs of any telco. So meaning that before you take that step, or at the same time, because we're agile, at the same time as you're taking that step, you have to understand, what data do I have? What quality is this data? Is it classified? Do I have the right policies? Who can use it? Who cannot use it? What data can I publish? What data can I sell? What data do I use internally to analyze network performance, customer behavior, and so on? So we believe that there's what is called data governance or data strategy today is a very, very important step to be done along with the transformation programs, because this will help you put in place really what can you do with this data, and what is the state of this data, and who can use it, and what is also sellable, and what is publishable, and what can you do internally in terms of utilizing this data. And I think we do a lot of work around this, and we think this is a huge gap in any transformation program. Before you undertake the transformation program, all along with, make sure you're organized internally along data, governing data, and making sure you have the right orchestration around data utilization.
Thank you, Ghazi. My last question will be to Martin and Philip, but we have 3 minutes, so we'll try to split it between both of you guys. I'll start by Martin and end with Philip. How do you think that the mobile operators are coping with the data game today against the dominance of OTT, on-demand services, and social media platforms? So how does the mobile operators are coping with this challenging game?
It's incredibly complex, and I mean, you just heard some of the things about the cleanliness of the data. What data do you have? We are a long way behind. The operators don't tend to be digitally native, except for a handful of the very new ones. So we haven't grown up with in a recent period of time with better data structures. So it's that big problem. I'm sitting in the EU, and if you look at the EU's approach to data and how that's going to spread across the world as well, and things that are coming out in terms of new regulations around it, and how the GAFA companies, the Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, are going to be regulated by EU. That's going to ripple across the world as well. So you have to keep one eye to what's happening with the regulation around data, another eye to your own internal processes and your cleanliness of data. And my very final word, to give Philip a chance to say something there as well, is it's not just about data for optimizing your own business. It's also data as a tool to monetization. Yeah. And as an industry, we've been very good at trying to use data to optimize ourselves. We're very scared of data as a tool for monetization. And we have to overcome that fear, otherwise we're going to get eaten alive by the hyperscalers.
Thank you. Thank you, Martin. Philip?
Well, my friend Kamal said on a previous panel that it's always good to slightly disagree in panels, so I'll slightly disagree with Martin for the sake of completion, at least from my perspective, which is, yes, the GAFA and the hyperscalers are very good at this, but at the same time, they establish their own rules pretty much off water without taking into account the societies in which they live. Or at least that's the impression they often give. I think we have a card to play there, which is we are all getting much better with the usage of our data than we were before. And that is going at incredibly fast speed, notably thanks to COVID, because all of a sudden, government, civil societies, everybody recognized that we had access to a certain type of good and that we were very cautious at using it and therefore could be trusted. And I think it's a card we need to play, which is we have this possibility of positioning ourselves all as trusted advisors to societies by behaving perfectly. And I think many of us are already engaged in that, and I think it's a good thing, which is, so there will have to be internal dialogues within companies to, exactly as was said before, to decide what is acceptable, how far do we want to go, what is useful. If we do that well, which is outside in, looking at what is helpful, what can be useful, the great benefit, then I think we are in a very sweet spot there. Compared to our competitors on that front.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, gentlemen, for this very insightful panel, and hope to meet up next year. Thank you.
Thank you.